The design process. The design process is probably the most important thing regarding your career. Okay? And I don't say that lightly. The design process is the methodology that you're going to undertake in order to arrive at the best creative solutions that you have to solve a problem. What is design? Design is the solution to a problem. Okay? So, design process, I can tell you that when I went to Long Beach State when I was in college, I had an incredible teacher. I don't ever want to badmouth my instructors. They were fantastic. But a lot of artists are intuitive, okay? And they don't have a methodology, so to speak. I mean, they do, but they don't realize and they don't know. It's kind of like the analogy of Michael Jordan being a basketball player that is so extraordinarily talented that he might not be the best coach because the way that he does things is just, he can't relate to regular people, mortal men. I think that an example of him coaching somebody like me would be, okay, so what you do is you dribble and then you jump from the top of the key and slam it. And I'm sitting there looking at him with my mouth open going, well, I don't have that repertoire. And that's what my teacher was. My teacher was extraordinary. Richard Oden, Dick Oden. Shout out to you, Dick. So anyway, the whole thing is that when I got out of school, we did thumbnails, but we didn't have a real structured process for thumbnails. And I found myself in a difficult scenario where I was, what was I doing? I'd be taking jobs and I would go and meet with somebody. You know, I'd be working my full-time job and I'd do freelance on the side. And I would meet somebody at a coffee house, and this is right out of school, so I was really just eager to work with somebody, anybody, and I was doing a lot of mom and pop jobs at that time. And so what would happen is I was very cocky because I could draw and paint really well. And I would say, I'm supposed to meet with somebody today. And I knew about the meeting for a week. But I could draw something. I'll just crank something out. How many of you out there think that drawing your thumbnails only takes 15 minutes? Excuse me. If you're honest with yourself, and you're anything like I was, 15 minutes, that's all I needed to crank out a thumbnail. Yeah. You can crank out an idea visually in about 15 minutes, a quick scribble, but is it a good idea? An idea that's going to go anywhere? So let's talk about the design process. What ended up happening with that scenario with me is I'd have a really beautiful series of drawings to show my client, and the client, who didn't know much about, maybe it was a mom and pop that was a startup, would look at these thumbnail sketches and be, blown away by a good drawing and say, oh my gosh, I want that. And I would sit there and grin and have them sign on that thumbnail to seal the deal. And then I would go home smiling, going, boy, that was easy. 15 minutes. Now I got a job, and then I'm going to get paid hundreds. So I'd go home to my little studio apartment. The next day I'd start to work on the project. It was probably a painting at the time. And I'd be painting something, and I'd be sitting there going, gosh, this is so boring. This is not very creative. This is not very exciting. And a day or two after the fact, just before the meeting to go and turn in the final project, the better ideas would come. And I'd be upset that that idea hadn't come to me when I was meeting initially, and then I would end up feeling guilty about turning in a subpar project, and I would end up going with the better idea and replicating the project with the new idea. So I was working really hard and not getting a lot out of it. Then I would meet with the person, and generally they would pick the second idea because it was a better idea. So timing was all off. I finally figured out, as soon as I get an opportunity, I start thumbnail and start doing all kinds of research, and I start doing ideation, meaning brainstorming and notation to get ideas onto paper. So it ends up being sort of a template for me to refer to so that I can turn in the best project that I can, because I give myself time to get the artwork in. The analogy I like to use is you can't place a seed into the soil and scream at it to grow right now. It takes time, and that's just how it is. And I believe that that's the same way that your ideas work. You have the problem, and you sit there and you do the research and you do some doodling to scribble out some ideas. And that process of going through that practice is where your seed, as it were, in your soil within your ears is actually germinating, and it's starting to grow, but it hasn't sprouted yet. So once I figured that out, I was able to get the best ideas I could in thumbnail form, and then get an approval And I'd be really satisfied that I did the best I could to come up with the best idea that I would be paid for, and I would be not just getting a job, because anybody that's got a lick of talent can get a single job. But did you do such a good job that that person wants to use you again? That's earning a client. Few people earn clients. A lot of people can do a job, but not very many people can earn a client. So with that, let's go into this. Okay, so this is the process. When I went to school, my master's degree, I ended up having to read this book called How to Get Ideas by Jack Foster, and I read it, and it's a gentleman that read for 29 years. He worked as an ad agency guy, and he always wondered how people came up with their ideas, and so he decided to interview all these people from different genres of creativity, whether it be music, art, screenwrites, science. And they would tell him basically the same steps to arrive at their ideas. And when I was reading this, I'm thinking, man, if I'd only had this book when I was in college, I would have been better faster. Because what I was reading is what I ended up evolving and finding out on my own through the school of hard knocks. So what I'm telling you here is with the understanding that people are people, and your brain works pretty much the same way as everybody else's in terms of the process of coming up with the best ideas. And so just hear me out, and I want you to give this a shot. And if you find out, that it's working for you, then you can continue to practice it and practice it and practice it. And then it gets to the point where you can guarantee that you're going to get an A every time. Because when you do your planning and you come up with a great thumbnail and it gets approved by your instructor, then you execute what you've planned. How do you fail? You don't. So, designing with adequate knowledge. As discussed before, a designer is a problem solver, so you must define the problem before tackling a potential solution. Design process will aid in the formulaic accumulation of your best, most thoughtful design solutions. So, step 1, define the problem. So if you are doing a beer label, that's your problem. I'm doing a beer label and I have to design that. So what exactly is the design assignment? As a reporter asks questions to paint a picture of the story with their words, a designer must also interview the client to create the visual story. Ask questions. It's your job to be informed, and it's highly professional to ask pertinent questions. A good tool is a Moleskine brand notebook to be at the ready to jot the acquired information down. An example would be to the client. So the client says to you, I need a logo. And the designer says, do you have any symbols that you might be married to in terms of the symbolism necessary to communicate your company mission? I need a logo. Okay, I got it. And you take off. You can't do that. It's like a waiter that takes an order at a restaurant. The biggest problem I see with a lot of young designers is they get a project, they don't do any thumbnails, they come back and they try to jam you with the solution without any information. Can you imagine going into a restaurant, sitting down, and then the waiter comes out 15 minutes later and puts food in front of you that you never ordered and expects you to pay? That's what it's like when you don't do adequate questioning of your client to find out what their needs are. You got to ask them like a waiter would ask you, what do you want for dinner? So you got to ask them, what do you need? Okay, research and thumbnails. So step 1 is define the problem. Step 2 is research and thumbnails. So when I said, how long does it take you? And you said 15 minutes. That's not, you can, but that's not the best way. The client is always more informed about their company than you are. So you get up to speed about the mission of the company and possible design solutions that may achieve the visual symbolic message. Scribble design ideas and terms to lay out all of your work before you access it. These are quick visual musings, simply for you to make personal notes to possible solutions. No one will see these, so be loose and don't take up as much time getting the images out of your head and into the world. You are done when you feel that you've explored all possible directions with your design. So you're drawing, you're researching, you're in your room, you've got your music on, or you're watching a program's playing in the background. So I do, it's kind of embarrassed, but I do Godzilla magazine covers. I've done Godzilla covers for GFan magazine for probably over a decade. And I do them here and there. I probably, it's a good time. It's fun. And when I do these thumbnails, I have the movie in the background playing of the particular Godzilla character that I'm drawing. And I sit there and I scribble and I look at movies and I look at resource material and I doodle and I come up with the best story that I can within a single static panel. Okay? And that could take all day, because, there are instances where I actually will purchase a model and photograph it to get just the mood I'm looking for that's screen accurate. And I can get the information I need, etc. It's a process. And then once you figure okay, I've kind of got my rough idea and you've scribbled out enough ideas and you can't think of anything else, you take a day off. Absolutely a must. Get away from the project, take a day off, don't even think about it. You're not allowed to. So step one is, okay, an analogy would be, okay, I've got to make a cake, but how do I make the cake? Defining the problem is I need to make a cake. Step two is I need to find a recipe online. So you get the recipe, you mix the batter, you go and you pop it in the oven. Popping it in the oven is step three. So again, while it's in the oven, it's cooking. And what I would say to you guys is when you've done your proper research and you take that day off, you may not consciously be thinking about it, but your subconscious has got its teeth into the meat and it's not going to quit. Your subconscious is trying to problem solve this and trying to figure out a solution. And so again, don't think that you're not working, but because your mind is actually working without you being cognizant of it. So you go and you have a good time. Go out on a date. Go do whatever you do. That's fun. Go for a hike. Go do a plein air painting out in the hills. Anyway, you take that day off. The next day you get up and you think, oh, okay, I got to get back to my project. You turn on the TV and there may be something that you see, or you're driving down the street, you see a billboard and you see a color that you look at or a scene that you look at that brings everything together. And that's where you get that moment of epiphany where you're like, everything coalesces and you're like, all the scribbles you did with this new picture made the idea come together. And that's where the magic comes from. But you have to facilitate that alchemy as it were. So you get the idea, that's the epiphany, and then you go and you draw 3 really detailed thumbnail sketches. So if your final beer label is 5 by 7, I would half that, 2.5 by 3.5. Keep the proportion of your final picture plane in order so that you don't get surprised when you size it up and it doesn't match. So that's a very key point right there. Reduce the picture plane format incrementally to be in proportion, and then do 3 awesome thumbnails, because you are a bit of a performer. When you go and you meet with your client, you show them those, the proper response is their jaw should drop, their eyes should get open, they should be excited and like, wow, how do I pick between my 3 favorite dishes? Okay? So the design analogies down there, like I said, you got to make a cake. Step 1 is defining the idea. Step 2, researching thumbnails means you find a recipe and you mix it. Step 3 is you pop that into the oven. Step 4 is when you get the epiphany moment and you hear the bell of the oven going ding and you go and grab that cake. Step 5 is you go and you execute the really good thumbnails and then you go and introduce them. So this could take you a minimum of 3 days. Minimum of 3 days. I would say give it a week. And, again, quick story, and I'm sorry to do this to you, but it's important. My friend is somebody that is really technologically savvy, and I just don't know how creative he is, but he teaches his students a 5-step technique to coming up with a project, 5 steps, or no, yeah, five design steps or whatever. And his students, when I was teaching them, they'd had him before. They'd come to me and they'd say, okay, well, I'm going to do this 5 design steps. And I said, no. These are the design steps I want you to go for in my class. And somehow or another, it got back to this guy, and he's a really great friend. Got back to him, and he was insulted. But we're such good friends. We're like brothers. I walked into the room to go and get breakfast with him, and he looked up at me with his little pouty face. And he says, come here. And I went over and he says, hey, are you talking badly about my 5 steps of design? And I said, no. I said, I don't know what they are. And that in my class, I want them to try my way, and then they can figure out what works. And I said, come on, let's go to breakfast and we'll talk about it. So we went to breakfast with about 5 of us faculty. We're sitting there at breakfast, and there was one person there that I don't particularly care for. I don't respect the guy because kind of unscrupulous the way that he conducts himself. He takes classes that he has no business teaching. I don't want to talk badly about somebody. I shouldn't do that. But the thing is I'm telling my friend, we're going discussing this, and the guy next to me is that guy I was telling you about. And I hear him giggling, and I look at him, and I said, what are you giggling about? And he says, well, this step 3, taking a day off. And I looked at him, and I said, let me ask you something. Have you ever had a multi-million-dollar job? And he looked at me, and, to his credit, he's a nice guy. He's just a little bit, different kind of guy. He looks at me, and he just shakes his head, and he goes, well, no. And I said, I have. And I said, you think Starbucks wants you to crank out their project in 3 days? No. You need to go and market research it. You need to go and check and see that everything's in order. You need to come up with the best idea possible because a logo for Starbucks could be millions. And, again, British Petroleum's logo, you guys, $600+ million for that. And you wonder, how could it be that much? Well, they're an international oil company. They have to go around the world and find out, culturally sensitive iconography, make sure they don't offend anybody, make sure that they can purchase the colors that they own. Did you know that you can own magenta? T-Mobile owns magenta for the technology industry. If you're a technological company and you come out with 100% magenta, they can sue you. So there's all this red tape and legalese that needs to be cared for in order to get it up to speed. That's why it gets to be such an exorbitant amount. So that was my point, and that's why I tell you guys, 3-4 days on a project that's going to be a part of your portfolio forever, it's not a big price to pay. That's how you get the best out of yourself. Please try to gear yourself up to be a 5-star restaurant, not a fast food joint, okay? That's, again, Milton Glaser, I believe, is the one that quoted that. Milton Glaser, the man that came up with the icon, I Love New York. God rest his soul, he just died last year. I was really fortunate to be able to meet that guy once. It was cool. But anyway, the whole thing is understand, take the time, do the best you're capable of, because you're looking at probably 10 to 15 pieces in your college career that's going to build up your portfolio. You're not going to get an A every time, but keep learning and keep learning. I would say, in my opinion, if you get one project that is an A quality piece per class, you're doing your job. Okay, so what I'm looking for your PDF that you're going to be submitting to me to show me your ideas to discuss is going to be here, okay? Cover page with your name, your class title, and your instructor's name on it. Page 2 of this multi-page PDF is going to be a 20-word brainstorm. It can be also illustrated in the form of a mind map where you have the subject in the middle, beer label, and then all around it you might put iconography or emotions or colors that you're contemplating to get the idea out of your head. Step 3, you're going to show me 3 examples that you looked at that were inspirational, whether it be for the type, for the color palette, for the images. Step 4 is where you're going to show 3 awesome thumbnails, okay? And if you look down here, I did this for my master's degree way back. The drawing on the left, I cranked it out. And I did 3 of these, and that's the one that my master's thesis instructor chose. Now, I did something wrong, but I'd had a relationship with the man, so I could crank this out, and he understood that I got color. But if you're doing this for a client, you should do this rough color, watercolor it, or take it into Photoshop and brush over some colors on it so that you can give them an idea of your color palette too. So this isn't actually the best way to go. This is good, but you still don't have the color settled upon, and that's a stone left unturned. But anyway, if you look, that's where we started. We had a discussion, and then the one on the right is what it ended up being, okay? Now, these, you guys can take a look at these at your leisure, and this is somebody that, it was a beer label project. I said one concept, scribbled out 25 different ways so we can discuss it. They didn't pay attention, and you could tell that they were doing it the day of, and they just had to get it in, and it's pretty, it's off the mark. They didn't do the same idea 25 different ways. They did 25 different ideas, and one of them is even happy beer, which was just a happy face with just to fulfill the requirement, which I kind of found insulting. Don't waste my time. So you can take a look at those. Now, here's an example of the design packet. This is a high school student who's absolutely incredible. Anthropomorphism, which is a human, or let's see, a non-human item, object, animal with human traits, like Bugs Bunny or Mickey Mouse might be, or the teacup and the candle from Beauty and the Beast might be an example of an anthropomorphic character. This is her keywords or her brainstorm. This is her research that she looked at for inspiration. And these are her thumbnails. Now, remember, she's in high school. In high school, this is pretty exceptional. I had her for a year, and by the end of the year, she was doing really beautiful thumbnails with value and everything. Now I'm going to show you guys the 3 thumbnails that I got from one of my best students. This is a thumbnail, okay? If you do your planning and your work like this, and you get an approval on this, you will not be surprised when you turn your project in. The client will be happy as they can be, grinning ear to ear. They can't stop. They can't, grab their wallet fast enough, and they can't wait to use you again because you empowered them. You showed them exactly what you had in mind. They see what they're going to get. They sign it, and they felt empowered because you didn't scribble something like those other thumbnails I showed you of Happy Beer, where they're like, what the heck am I getting? I'm embarrassed. I don't know what to do, and I'm running out of time. I have to use this person. Okay, I'll go with that one. And they hope for the best. And then they go home riddled with anxiety. And then when they come and they pick up the final piece and it's not stellar, they feel cheated. You feel ugly because you took money and you know that they weren't happy about it. It's a bad scenario. So what I'm saying is don't procrastinate. Do the design process. Take at least 3 days, maybe a week. Come up with the best ideas you can. Get it to something at this finish. Then what you do is you enjoy. You get that signature. You made them so happy because artists, you know the stereotypes about artists and creatives. A little flaky, a little, flaky. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. You guys know. I mean, I was that guy. I still, to some degree, am a little bit flighty. I'm a daydreamer. And when I'm meeting with a client, though, I got to get into reality, interview these people, understand that it's my job to take care of them and do the best I can for them because I care to make sure that they're taken care of. Execute the plan and get it to them and then move on to the next job. But, and again, that's what I was saying earlier about getting a job versus earning a client. So you do it to this degree, a finish, then you get the signature, they're happy, you're happy, you go home, you bring this into Illustrator, you trace it, and you have a great time. Because you know you're going to get paid. You know that there isn't any gray area. This was design thumbnail number 2. And design thumbnail number 3. Which would you choose? 1, 2, or 3? I actually like 1. But I have a feeling that the reason he chose 2 is probably because I told him that 3/4 views sell a lot better. If you look at straight-on views are very amateurish. Whenever somebody's beginning to draw, they always draw a straight-on view of a face or a straight profile. But 3/4 views is where you kind of show off. So I said, go with this one. It'd be good for your portfolio. So he did this, and I actually hope that he redid this because this versus this, it's so dark. I would have left the background white like he has here or made it like a blue, beautiful sky because the blue is a complement of orange and brown is a shade of orange. That would have been a gorgeous background. So I might need to call this guy. This has been, I haven't talked to Johnny in about, Facebook him, but been about 10 years. Okay, so that's how you do it, you guys. And so, again, when I'm asking for the design process, next week you guys are going to turn in a 4-page PDF. Again, the process is going to be the cover page, the 20-word mind map / brainstorm, the 3 samples that you show me that were influential in your design, and then the 3 thumbnails that you intend to work on. Now, what I would suggest is if you do black and white drawing pencil, on your left-hand side, you might throw some discs in there to indicate the warm color, the cold color, and that would be it. I can figure out what black and white are going to be. Okay? So good luck with that. I hope that was helpful to you guys. I'll talk to you very soon.